Thanks, Justin, very much for that. And I'm a little bit hoarse today, so I hope all of you can hear me, and I'll try to, with the microphones, make sure that that's possible. But this is the best day of the year for me, to be in this room with all of you, to see what is happening. What is happening in business, what is happening in the NGO community, what is happening in governments and multilateral organizations. And over the course of these 2 days, we're going to get to see and talk a lot about what is happening, what has been enabled and opened up and unleashed by a very, very simple idea called shared value, which I think came at a time when I think we were ready to make what Justin just called a tectonic shift. What I'd like to do this morning in my very brief time is talk a little bit about how this idea is becoming indeed a movement. What are the signs of transformation that are underway? What are we learning about how to make this actually work? How are the various stakeholders besides business evolving their thinking? How can we take this idea, and how are we taking this idea, and how will we all take this idea actually now to the next great frontier, which is the investment community, the Wall Street community that is so close we can kind of feel the aura of it here. And where do we go from here? What are some of the profound issues that we have to address in actually putting this idea in practice? You know, I have been working in business and in management now for a god-awful long time. It dawns on me once in a while how long I've been at this. I have never felt more optimistic about business, about how we in business can matter. I've never felt more optimistic about the ability of us in business to attract the best and the brightest young people into business again, which has not been the case for the last 10 or 15 or 20 years. I've never felt more optimistic about actually our ability to do something really big, having to do with all these seemingly intractable societal problems that we all have. I think there is a tectonic shift going on, as Justin said. And I think it's all of us are really on the front line of that shift. And there's still skirmishes and debates about whether it's the right direction, but I think those are declining. There's still a lot to learn about how to get this done, because it reflects a new discipline of management. It reflects perspectives and ideas about marketing and customer and brand and supply chain and value chain and business environment that we've never understood before. We are in some important ways rewriting the discipline of management here. Not eliminating a lot of what we've learned before, but just adding dramatically to what the opportunity for business is all about. So I've never been more optimistic, which is nice, because I think for the last couple decades it's been easy to be pessimistic and concerned, and as we see the mismatch between the obvious social challenges we have that only seem to get more challenging and the limited resources that society has to devote to those social challenges. And I think it's been easy to be pessimistic, but I think now we have an opportunity, and at least certainly I feel profoundly optimistic. And when I kind of feel the energy and the karma from the people in this room, it just grows. I think we're here in the middle of something that is, I think, going to hold an enormous opportunity for all of us. All of us, whatever role we play, in whatever sector, to actually move the plates in a profound and important way. So the idea of shared value really depends on actually a long history of evolution in thinking about the role of business in society. We couldn't have gotten here with shared value without going through that history. That history has created important foundations on which we are all building. If we go back, the original efforts were focused on philanthropy. And that was a profoundly important step for business, to get away from the idea that business's job was just to do business, leave me alone, but to understand that business really had an opportunity and many believed an obligation to give back in a variety of ways. And we got better and better at philanthropy as time progressed. And corporations have built up that capacity, which I think is going to be necessary to actually take the shared value movement even further. As we evolved our thinking, we started to see that it was more than just giving. It really had to do with really the whole attitude of the corporation, the role of the corporation in the community, the compliance of the corporation with the standards of the community, the whole notion of sustainability, which meant that we had to be very careful about the kind of harm we were causing, and we had to start learning how to do business in ways that allowed us to continue to do business in a healthy society going forward. All this was profoundly important foundation. Until companies started understanding this era of corporate social responsibility and the multiple dimensions that it entailed, we were not ready to take this next step. We could have not had the trust of society to take this next step. We learned the measurement disciplines that were necessary to take this next step to shared value. But this shift from corporate responsibility to shared value represents truly a discontinuity in thinking. Shared value is not about balancing interests of stakeholders, which was the fundamental idea that we've been operating on historically, that you had to balance interest, that there were trade-offs between economic success and social outcomes. This idea of shared value crossed a fundamental line in saying that actually if we deeply understand what business does, if we deeply understand this notion of meeting needs at a profit, if we deeply understand the social challenges and issues we face, that we can align and actually put those together. We don't have to balance interests anymore. We shouldn't think that way. Our challenge is actually to create the shared interest, where the very thing that we do to address the societal need actually maximizes the economic opportunity of the business. That is the line, the fundamental line that we've crossed. To get there, we had to put aside a lot of ideas that I think still hold us back. Again, this notion of trade-off. There's so many people in this world that still believe it's profitable for businesses to pollute, when what we've learned over the last 20 years is actually it's profitable for businesses not to pollute. So many people believe it's profitable for businesses to have an unsafe set of working conditions. when everything we've learned now for the last 20 years has taught us that actually zero accidents is the most profitable model. We're still stuck in many quarters around this notion of trade-off, but we're starting to understand that actually there's this deep and fundamental alignment between productivity and growth and revenue and meeting needs and actually tackling and engaging the social problems and the social opportunities we face. As Justin just mentioned, we're still nervous about this framing of the problem and the opportunity. Many companies now are pursuing shared value activities, initiatives, programs, and efforts. And we'll talk about a few of those in a bit. But most companies are still very reluctant to talk about profit. Companies are still reluctant to say that in addressing this societal problem, we're making a profit. And that's because we have another obstacle, which is that in so many places, among so many people, profit is still seen as somehow taking away from society. And therefore, if we make a profit, that's somehow illegitimate. What we know from shared value thinking is that actually profit is what enables us to solve the problems of society. Because if we can make a profit, if we can create a business model in dealing with help or dealing with financial lack of financial services, or in dealing with the educational deficits that we find in society, if we can make a profit, this enables us to scale. This enables us to serve millions and billions of people if we've got a good idea. And this enables us not to drain society, but actually to address these problems fundamentally and actually create solutions. So again, we're in a journey here of very substantial proportions in terms of how we think about the role of business, how we think about the role of profit, how we think about whether the motives of business and society are really aligned or not. We're still in that shift. And all of you in this room who are sort of on the vanguard of that shift, and in the process we're feeling uneasy, and we're feeling a little awkward, and not everybody agrees, and we have critics who don't trust us, who are still kind of caught up in the view that they might legitimately have about things that business has done in the past. But what we're talking about here is truly an opportunity to shift those plates. And the question is, how can we do that better? How can we better understand the opportunity? How can we better understand the way in which to put these ideas into practice? Can't seem to get this to turn. Can somebody help me with the slides? I pushed every button I can find. Oh, there we go. There we go. Good. All right. So the basic opportunity of shared value, I think, is something that we're going to be talking about over the course of this morning, and we have some amazing, marvelous guests with us over the course of the 2 days, but also in this first session. I think one of the kind of major concepts in shared value is that if we actually want to tackle societal problems and needs, the resources to do that are heavily weighted in the private sector. So although we need NGOs and they will play a profound role for years to come, for as far as the eye can see, and we of course need government, and it will play a profound role as far as the eye can see, the opportunity to actually engage the private sector in these societal issues is really the opportunity to move the world, because this is where most of the resources are. We've had this understanding that we've got to get the private sector involved in this kind of activity, but the big confusion has been how. How do we get the private sector involved? In what way? With what motivation? Through what process? And shared value, I think, is offering a process that actually is deeply comfortable and natural for the private sector, once the private sector can think of this in the right way. Now, in terms of the other stakeholders, again, if it were 3 or 4 years ago, we would have, this would be an effort primarily done in business, by business, as business was starting to change its thinking. But now what's happened is that the NGO community, not universally, but in very large and important ways, is really starting to understand the power of connecting its activity with business in the pursuit of shared value. And there's many of you in this room that are at the vanguard of this. We're so proud of you. Think about how hard it is for an NGO that's really built their past on sort of business being sort of the problem. Actually starting to understand how the right business with the right attitudes and the right approach can actually be a critical solution that NGOs can partner with. And now we're starting to see proliferating examples of this, and we'll hear about those over the course of these 2 days. What a marvelous, exciting, energizing transition this is. Moving from warfare and strife and embarrassment and humiliation and negativity on both sides to a collaboration around the fundamental objectives that both stakeholders have. We're starting to see a similar evolution in government. Governments, I think, have historically been deeply embedded with the trade-off model. That there is this trade-off between private and social, that economic and social, that the private sector, because of externalities, is sort of inevitably going to not put adequate attention on things like safety and the environment and health and those issues. And therefore, government's role was as a force to hold business to its feet to the fire, to regulate, to scrutinize. Again, that mindset was kind of deeply embedded in the thinking of many government officials. And I've seen this all over the world in my work with governments on economic development. Now what we're starting to see is that government, partly because it realizes its limits, its lack of resources, is starting to recognize that if it can actually harness this shared value concept, that it can unleash enormous positive progress on the most important issues that it cares about. And President Santos, who I have known for now a long time, is just one of a number of national leaders that is starting to understand and take this new path. How can we in government actually collaborate with businesses? How can we create the right incentives? How can we create the right infrastructure? How can we create the right enabling environment? How can we create the right support so that business will aggressively invest in shared value type solutions? This is again, for somebody who's worked in this field for so long, to see this starting to happen after decades and decades and decades is, I think, a shift in the plates. Is everybody nervous about it? Yes. Are governments a little nervous? Oh, yes. We're not quite sure about these private sector folks and why they're doing this and what their real motives are, and will they sustain this? And we're not sure. The citizens are not that sure. But ultimately, we're in the middle of a process. If we can make this work, and if we can build some trust, I think we've something profoundly important is going on. Now, in the shared value area, what's happening now is we're starting to go from what is the basic idea, which is what we initially talked about, and how is it different from philanthropy and corporate social responsibility. We're starting to move now to driving the depth of understanding and insight into actually how to put shared value into practice. 2 or 3 years ago, we were looking for examples so that we can sort of show that the concept could work. Now there's thousands of examples, and they're just piling up every day, and this room is full of examples. Now the question is, how can we create a real discipline, a management discipline around how to do this? What we're doing at FSG is actually to start to tackle this challenge in a variety of ways. What we're finding is that if we take deep dives into individual sectors, we can move from kind of the general concept of shared value and the general principles to actually, okay, what does that mean here? What does that mean in pharma and medical devices? What does that mean in banking? What does that mean in extractives? The next really major body of work that FSG will release is on shared value in the extractive sector. As you see here, a really big deal. An area where there's enormous resources in this field, 5% of global GDP. These activities are taking place in most cases in very poor countries, in very remote areas where there's every possible societal problem and need. Extractives really is a very striking case of shared value opportunity, but not shared value history. Extractives is a field where there's been massive strife between the industry and the community. Despite the fact that most extractive companies have been spending hundreds or multi-hundreds of millions of dollars per year on community engagement, on every possible kind of community engagement you could all imagine. What we see now in extractives is, again, with the concept of shared value, the opportunity to change the nature of the relationship. And that is a rich set of opportunities sort of summarized on this slide. And there'll be a lot more about this. I know there's many of you in this room that are in this field. But how to move from kind of licensed to operate, have a good reputation in the community, to actually creating shared value is going to be a big transformation for the extractive sector, but one that I think is going to allow for enormous benefits, not only for the companies, but also for the communities in which they operate. And we're starting to learn the playbook here. Just like over time, we will learn the playbook in other sectors. And you will invent the playbook as you tackle the challenges and the opportunities of shared value in whatever field you're in. This is the journey we're on. We're going from what is this concept? Does it make sense? Could we find an example that we're actually made a difference to how do we understand deeply how to do this on large scale in field after field after field? How do we understand the playbook of how to actually do this? Now, we're also seeing a transformation not just in the depth and the implementation of shared value concepts in business, but we're also seeing a shift really from individual initiatives and ideas and examples within companies to really enterprise-wide programs. Some of the leaders in this field have started to make this transformation. We've just highlighted a few examples here on this slide. And Nestle, the pioneer, at least for us in this area, and this close partnership that we had in Nestle is just a marvelous example of how this is now baked into the goals for the businesses. It's part of the corporate mission explicitly. There's an organization structure that encompasses the entire company around this agenda. This is not something in the off to the side. This is now part of the corporate management process at Nestle, and is producing enormous gains in so many areas of the company. Dow, we've talked about this example to some of you before, really a corporate program to challenge every single business unit with this opportunity. They call it the Breakthroughs to World Challenges Initiative. And out of that is coming multiple billion-dollar businesses that didn't exist. Nobody ever thought of them. Nobody thought of the idea. Because they weren't seeing their role that way. They weren't seeing their role as an innovator in dealing with society's most pressing challenges. They were seeing their role as a chemical company that was doing good stuff, but sort of along the traditional lines of how they had traditionally competed. But with this Breakthroughs Challenges program, Dow was able to kind of reset the culture, the idea, the scope, the sense of opportunity of their business unit from a project to an enterprise-wide initiative. Novartis, created a whole business group focused on this to kind of be an innovation lab in this area, and seed capital to kind of explicitly enable entities within the organization to take shared value initiatives. Becton Dickinson has really bet very heavily on really training deeply their entire management team through multiple workshops and seminars in multiple locations throughout the company, so that everybody has the same language, everybody has the same opportunity, everybody knows the historical examples that have been in the company in the past that have proved the idea is powerful. Again, from a sort of isolated individual in an isolated group working on a sort of an individual initiative to a more enterprise-wide bet. And Intel is a wonderful example, too, in terms of the incentive structures that have been started to be put in place to really put this on the objective list for every significant manager in the company, and have a part of compensation coming from, can you think outside of the box in this way? That's part of what good management is, at Intel. Widening the sense of what the opportunity is, which is the essence of the shared value concept. Uh-oh. Okay, whoops, that was not good. Let's go. Simple things still get in the way. Can't get it to go past this one. There we go. All right, so what else is happening as we start to kind of continue this evolution process? Again, a few years ago it was, what is this idea? Will it work? Can we find examples? Is it really different? Now what we're seeing is actually companies are starting to redefine who they are. As this slide shows, so many of us in business, and by the way, I'm a board of directors member. I did this too. So many of us in business have tended historically to sort of define ourselves about what we do in the sense of what our product is. somebody asks us what we do, and we say, well, we're a food company. Or IBM, we make computers and software and provide technology. And Pearson, we publish textbooks. We happen to be the largest textbook publisher in the world. But what the shared value idea is starting to do, and it's starting to accelerate, is it's starting to get many of us and many companies to actually question what they really do. And to move from kind of a product-based definition of the company to a definition that reflects the social needs and the social purpose that that company is actually meeting. And these are, again, just some examples, but there are many more. There's now and we're collecting data on this, there's a fascinating change of mission statement now going on in business, in the world, among leading companies. Many companies are changing their mission statement in this way. To define the mission in terms of what their capabilities and what they do allow them to do in society that's valuable, rather than kind of be locked into that more traditional mode of competition and how they competed historically. Again, this is a very, very exciting and powerful shift that we see going on. And finally, we are now beginning to tackle, in a sense, the last frontier. I shouldn't say last, because I know there's going to be another one. But the last big frontier, and that is in the investment community. Now, where have we come in the investment community in this general view of how businesses should relate to society? Where we start in the investment community is there is no role of business in society, except just to make a profit and pay your taxes and hire people. That's it. Any social activity among a very large portion of the investment communities is just a misuse of shareholders' resources. That's not our job in business. It's not our right to spend shareholders' money on stuff. That's where a lot of investors come from and still come from today. As we see here, though, investment thinking started evolving, driven less by the investors and more by the clients. Because clients would come to investors and say, well, we want to invest some money with your fund, but we'd kind of like it if you didn't invest in cigarette companies. Because we don't want to put our money in cigarette companies. Because we don't think, they're serving a good social purpose. Okay? And really, investment thinking started to evolve first with what is often called ethical investing. That is, you have negative screens. There's a certain set of companies, no matter, you can invest a portfolio, but you got to keep out of a certain set of companies that are doing things that are unethical or viewed as damaging or harmful to society. That was kind of where the investment community started, grudgingly. Okay, shareholder, if that's what you really want, we won't invest. We will not invest in this company that has money that is investing in Sudan. Okay. We'll whack out a few companies from our portfolios. Over time, this evolved to what is often called sustainable investing, where we started wanting a more positive approach by looking at companies that did well on sustainability measures, ESG measures. And as you know, a whole industry has grown up to both develop these measures and then score companies on these measures and create, rankings on these measures, and there's a whole lot of investment portfolios that are really built on these measures. The Dow Jones Sustainability Index, things like that. And that was, if you think about the transition in corporations, it's really the same thing investors are going through. This is the equivalent of the CSR stage, where investors are kind of looking at the world through the lens of, is the company doing well on all these multiple diverse sustainability indicators. Then a relatively small movement, spun out called impact investing. Now this was the plate starting to shift. Because impact investing was all about finding for-profit companies that actually had a social purpose at the core of their strategy. And this is starting to home in on the fundamental idea of shared value. But where we have to go in the investment community is we have to start to understand that actually impact investing is good, but actually to mainstream here, we have to realize that every company has opportunities for shared value, and that those companies that are going to be successful in extractives or pharma or banking or any other field, those companies that are going to be successful, who are going to get a competitive advantage, who are going to be productive, who are going to be the most profitable, who are going to have the growth opportunities, are going to be the ones that assimilate and embody shared value thinking. And so instead of having to have a separate asset class and a separate whole investment discipline, the shared value concept really means, for investors, that you have to add another chapter to core investment analysis. Whenever you analyze an industry and whenever you analyze a company, you've got to think about shared value. Because this is going to be profoundly important to growth and productivity and differentiation going forward. That's where we've got to go. The investment community is very skeptical about shared value. They're back where we were in business, here, years ago. Is this really real? Is it material? Can you prove it? Do you have data? That's where the investment community is on this. But they will change as this movement grows, as we generate more and more opportunities and to drive this agenda forward. So where we are is we're now in what I would call the kind of, we're in the middle of going from an idea to a movement. We've gone from really one constituency, mostly companies interested in this, to multi-stakeholders. We have gone from proof of concept to discipline and depth and of insight into actually how to do it. We have gone from sort of one-off examples to more enterprise, structured, organized efforts. We're in that